So without further ado, what you've all been waiting for, I want to introduce the lovely Jackie Rafter, our esteemed speaker. She is also a fellow Haskayne alumni member and founder and CEO of Higher Landing. So she will guide us through transforming ourselves as leaders, finding our hidden skills and understanding our own values. So looking forward to that. Over to you, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Sue-Ann. It is, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It is really wonderful to be back supporting my alumni. I graduated a number of years ago, but have a very soft place in my heart for any Haskayne MBA grads. So please feel free to reach out to me personally after the session if you would just like to connect. Or connect with me on LinkedIn. Always will find time for you. Also, Sue-Ann, I just wanted to touch upon something you said with respect to the Alumni Alliance's mandate of collaboration. Oddly enough, that happens to be one of the top soft skills of the next decade. And I think that the more opportunities that you can seize to utilize those skills, the better off you're going to be, certainly with your career. The one thing that I just want to make clear to everybody is that how you manage your career today is very different than how you managed your career a few years ago. I mean, especially with COVID. And we're in the midst of this paradigm shift. Yes, there's a lot of change, but there's also a lot of opportunity. And I'm really excited to be talking to you about some things that you could do, some practical ways that you can manage your careers today to help you to quote unquote land higher, whether you are working or whether you are in transition, hence the name of my company, Landing or Higher Landing. So I'm going to talk to you about how you align your career with the future of work. And the organizing committee was kind enough to share some information with me with respect to some of the reasons that you chose to come here today. So I'm hoping that I will be able to address a lot of your reasons for wanting to attend today. And if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to save those for the Q&A afterwards. So just for those of you that aren't familiar with what we do, I started Higher Landing, oh gosh, over 6 years ago to help people not just manage their careers, but to land higher. Almost all of our clients are professionals. So they're professionals like yourselves. We do work with a lot of MBAs. Some are recently graduated. Others are several decades on in their careers. So we work with individuals. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of our programs later in case any of you might be interested. We do have one that is free, that is sponsored by the government. But we also service the outplacement world, if any of you understand what that is. It's a service that corporations will use to help their transitioning employees expedite their path to their next opportunity. So what is really interesting in Alberta, especially Calgary, and I know that some of you might not be residing here at the moment, but I just like to talk about this workforce shift that we have seen in the economy. I mean, it's one of the largest societal workforce shifts in the history of the world. Never mind this province. And what has happened is we've essentially experienced 2 years of digital transformation in about two months at the onset of the pandemic. And you know, it's really left a lot of people with a lot of questions. Some have landed even in better places as a result of the pandemic, and others have really been struggling. So my question is where has this left you? And what is interesting is, so I started my company in early 2015, and I had no idea that we were just at the beginning stages of the collapse of the commodity market in oil and gas. And when I look back, you know, this is when we started to see the drying up of investment capital, the blocking of pipeline access, job redundancies, major layoffs happening. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. And what is really interesting is that a lot of the clients that were going through our program, a lot of MBAs, a lot of people from the energy sector, a lot of professional engineers too, and I know some of you here are have an engineering background. You know, I was trying to tell them back then that, you know, when you are looking for your next opportunity or trying to manage your career, please just keep your options open. We are in the midst of a major paradigm shift, and the only constant is going to be change. So a lot of those people were really happy with doing what they were doing, of course, and they didn't want to change. So they stuck their feet in the sand and they said, no, you know, I've been through, you know, how many booms and busts in this province, and I know that we're going to boom again, and I'm just gonna wait it out. Well, the reality is, you guys, is that a lot of those people are still unemployed today, and it is truly heartbreaking. So if that wasn't bad enough, a few years later, so we're looking 2017, 2018, this is, and I'm talking mostly Alberta here, that's when we started to see the proliferation of artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics, all colliding together to create at the time what we thought was a perfect storm. And then wait till, you know, 2020 came, and it was, and, you know, and welcome to the pandemic. Nobody saw that coming. And it was like we were hit by a bus. And so we are in the midst of one of the largest workforce transitions in the history of the world. And what nobody seems to be talking about is how that has impacted what people do, the kind of jobs they do, and how to manage their career going forward. And the fact that I've got an MBA is kind of precipitous, because I'm going to share some tips that might be specifically relevant to you as you manage your own careers going forward. When I look at how job search and career management have changed, one of the big differentiators is that you can no longer rely on your hard skills, and this to manage your career going forward. One of the things that has changed is that what is replacing hard skills in the job market today is your value. And I just want to clarify, when I talk about job market, I'm talking about your career, whether you are working or not. The same principles are applying. So at my background, prior to Higher Landing, I had a couple of professional search practices, and we were taking people to market, and very similar to what some proactive search firms do. And oftentimes, you know, it was interesting, you know, we could say, well, you know, we have, you know, somebody, he's a professional engineer, you know, 10 years reservoir engineering experience, MBA, project man, PMP, blah, blah, blah. And all we would do is list off all of their credentials. Well, now, do you know how many professional engineers with MBAs, PMPs, and a myriad of other certifications who are out of work right now? You can no longer just rely on those hard skills in order to go to market. You have to be smarter, you have to be more strategic, and you've got to be proactive. And you also have to be able to tap into the hidden job market. So hopefully I'm going to share some tricks with you on that today. And the other thing that's happened as a result of the pandemic especially is that businesses have been forced to transform and automate at record speed. Now, that has resulted in tremendous job redundancies. And, you know, there's a lot of jobs that will never come back, especially from our energy sector, actually multiple sectors. But especially if we're talking Alberta, it's especially impacted our energy job market. But the upside of that is that there are new jobs that are being created almost by the minute. I can barely keep up. And so the one thing that you have to understand is that when you are going to market now, you can no longer just rely on your hard skills. And you have to be able to translate that into value, because your hard skills will become redundant. One of the things that's kind of a jaw-dropping stat, the Business Council of Alberta recently released some research saying that the shelf life of hard skills has gone from 30 years to now 6, meaning that anything that you now learn in any kind of educational setting will become redundant in 6 years. I mean, that's terrifying for some people. So what has happened is that what is replacing some longer term education or more shorter term courses. So even like an MBA, 2 years or 18 months, I did mine in 18 months. And after that, I just probably wanted to shoot myself. But what is happening is a lot of people are looking for shorter, we call it micro-credentialing. So that is kind of replacing more of the longer term education, because people know that by the time they finish a 4-year degree, oftentimes a lot of the skills that they've learned have become redundant. Now that's a little bit different with an MBA, because you are taught all functional areas of a business, and it's a more general education, which is wonderful. But even still, when you land in the job market, you have to understand that learnability is going to be a tremendously valued skill in the market, because whatever job you land now, or if you are working now, guaranteed it's going to look different 6 months from now. And so I would hate for any of you to be turned down for an opportunity or for a promotion simply because you don't have some very simple technical skill or application that you could have learned on your own time over the course of a weekend. So if you do have that ability to learn things really quickly, you have to say so. You have to. Our job right now is to educate the world and your employers and your market on how their lives are going to be different with you. And it's your job to educate them on what your value is. It's not about being boastful. It's about education. So the other thing that has happened is that we are now in the midst of unprecedented job market uncertainty. So like I said, jobs are becoming redundant by the minute. But at the same time, jobs new jobs are coming onto the market so quickly that, I mean, I don't think anybody can really keep on top of what they are. And it's happening. No industry is void of that. And so because of the market becoming so competitive, this is more reason, you guys, not to be relying solely on your hard skills. And I'm not talking about diminishing the value of your education. I'm talking about how you translate that into value for somebody, because a job will be ripped away from you in a second. Hard skills will become redundant. As soon as you take a course 6 months later or 6 years later, depending on what it is, it's going to be gone. You're going to have to upskill. You're going to have to retrain. But the one thing that nobody will ever take away from you, and it will be constant, is your value. So I'm going to talk to you about how you identify your value. Understanding your value at this point in history and in your careers is probably one of the best investments of your time that you can make, because it will serve you for life. You know, like I said, a job will be ripped away from you in a second. Your value stays with you for life. And so whatever that value is what you should be paid for. So our job right now is to be going out searching opportunities that we can be paid for that value. And it's a very new way of looking at our careers. Usually the old-fashioned way, and I will tell you this after having worked in the search industry for so many years, you know, you post an ad, people apply, you call in a short list, and, you know, somebody's hired. Maybe more than one person is hired. And, you know, those days are kind of gone. And the majority of our clients are now landing jobs that are created for them. And that's because they're able to solve a problem. So one of the questions that I want you to be asking yourself is, what kind of problems would you be inspired to solve, right? So please understand that your value is more than your job title, your education, your accomplishments, and your hard skills. Your value is more than what is on the outside of you. And oftentimes, that we also work with professional athletes who are transitioning their careers. And, you know, they probably struggle more than anybody. And the reason for that is that their entire identity has been wrapped up with the number on the back of their jersey or who they were on the ice. And so to try to get them to look at themselves outside of that, you have to understand their self-esteem probably is lower than any of yours could ever be at your lowest low. And that is because they've identified with something outside of themselves, right? They're no longer that top scorer, that top goalkeeper, or whatever that is. So the same thing will happen to you if that's all you are identifying yourself as. Hey, listen, I'm a great, you know, VP of whatever, global affairs. I'm a great chief information officer. You know, I've got an MBA and a this and that and a law degree and whatever. And I've achieved the top of this and that. No, you guys. those are all things outside of you. So who are you outside of those things? So we are in a market right now that is essentially forcing you to look at yourself outside of the exterior. The reason for that is that the exterior is essentially a dime a dozen in this market. So if you really want to manage your career strategically, you have to understand who you are outside of all of the trimmings on the outside of your hard skills on your resume. And, you know, a lot of times people will say, well, you know, I want a lot of money. And, you know, it's funny because when I had my search practice, I was, you know, meeting with, you know, people in their mid-20s, and, you know, I'd say, well, how much compensation do you want to make? Oh, over 3. And it's like, over 3 what? 300. And I said, 300 what? Well, I want to make over 300,000. And I said, okay, well, you know, you're 24, 25 years old. How would you justify that? Well, you know, my buddy, you know, he got into a company and they went public, and, you know, he got a bunch of shares, and, you know, I'm way smarter than him and I can do more, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh my God, you're comparing yourself to something outside of yourself, first of all, and that's a battle you will never win. So when it comes to identifying your worth, you guys, there's no way you can identify, you can't put a price tag on your worth until you understand your value. So what is your value? And your value is commensurate with the degree that you are providing a service to someone that they will actually pay you for. That it happens to be in demand today. Things that were in demand, skills, services, products that were in demand prior to COVID, for example, are very different than those things that are in demand today. And it's really important that you understand, you educate yourself on what has changed. Otherwise, you're going to be selling a bunch of products. When I talk about taking a product to market, in effect, you guys are the products. We are the products that are going to market. Whether we are working or not, we are still a product. So you have to make sure that your product is continuously in demand. And so how do you understand what's in demand? Well, you have to ask. You have to educate yourself. What kind of problems need to be solved today? Like I said, the problems that somebody had yesterday might be different than the problems that they have today. And this is one of the things that one of the deep holes that a lot of people fall into when they are in job search mode. And I know that some of you are in transition, you're looking for work. I want to caution you that a lot of times people will show up to jobs that have been posted, and they'll get an interview, and they'll show up with a job posting, and they'll say, well, I can do this and this and this. And it's sort of like they want to check all the boxes. But the reality is that what they don't realize is that they have failed to ask the important questions of what is important to their employer and what is it that they really need today. Because what those employers, 9 times out of 10, what they really need is not on that job description. Because sometimes they don't even know. Oftentimes they've delegated the job posting to an assistant or to a colleague, and the job posting could be 2 or 3 years old. So all they're using it, they don't really know what they want. So your job is to sell yourself when you're in there, but you can't sell yourself until you are armed with the appropriate information. So one of the exercises that I'm going to take you through this afternoon is an exercise to help you to identify what it is that somebody might really want and what they might need today. A lot of times too, when people are financially stuck or they're not making enough money, what I tell them is that it's because they've stopped serving. Whatever it was that they were serving that their employer needed last week, last month, last year, might not be required right now. And so it's not that they're a bad person because they get laid off or because they're not getting promoted. It's because they're not serving what their employers need today. And so when you're managing your career, it is a full-time job every day to be going out there doing what I call IPs. I'm going to talk to you about this whole notion of IPs in a moment. One of the most important gifts that you can give yourself, to find out what your employer needs today. Sometimes what they need today is very different than what they needed yesterday. That's how you can have what I call career security. So there is no such thing as job security anymore, but what is replacing it is career security. But in order to have that career security, you need to know your value or your brand, or as I call it, your secret sauce. Because like I said, a job can be ripped away from you in a second. Knowing your value stays with you for life. So where are you serving? Where are you adding that value? Because when you are consistently adding value that is required and appreciated by somebody, your financial potential is unlimited. But if you're serving the needs of yesterday versus today or tomorrow, good luck. You're gonna be a casualty. That's the hard truth. And a lot of that, some of that might have happened to some of you. So when it comes to your value, it really comes back to understanding who you are outside of, you know, the shell, outside of your exterior. And I really want you to ask yourselves, you guys, how is it that you might have served others consistently? And a lot of the questions that we ask in our program, help people to uncover this. It's not really easy, but it's sort of like peeling back the layers of an onion. It does require a self-discovery process. So, you know, when you're asking yourself this question, ask yourself, what is it that you have been relied upon for no matter what, consistently, wherever you go? What is it that you have been known as the go-to person for wherever you go? Whether it was in your MBA cohort, whether it was in your last 3 jobs, whether it was in your family, it doesn't matter. So who were you? Because that is your value, and that is what we need to take to market. So have you been the person that has consistently made other people look good? Have you made others feel good? Have you been the one to bring harmony to teams? Have you been the one that's going to bring new business, and wherever you go, it's like you've got this massive network and you're always referring business and referring leads? You know, are you the one that's got a great sense of humor? I'll tell you, people think that that's, you know, who cares, I mean, about a sense of humor. As being in the search industry for as long as I have, I'll tell you, anybody that had a sense of humor, that had written on their resume a sense of humor, I would bring them in. The reason for that is I always knew that there was value. The reason for that is because I have never met somebody with a great sense of humor that also wasn't highly intelligent. So when you think about the value of somebody with a great sense of humor in the workplace, they usually increase engagement, they decrease stress, people want to come to work. There's all kinds of reasons that that adds value. So you think that might not be relevant in this job market? It is very relevant. So do you have a track record of consistently being the one that's going to resolve issues that everybody else gives up on? Are you the one that has this ability to build relationships, great relationships wherever you go? And by the way, these were just pulled from some of our clients recently. Are you the peacekeeper? We had a geologist in an MBA in our program recently, and he transitioned his career from, and that's something else we do, is people that want to pivot, we help them do that as well. He pivoted from geology to banking, and his value as a banker, yeah, he started at the lower rung, but he probably got 3 promotions in about 6 months because he knew his value, and his value was as the peacekeeper. And what he had this really good track record of doing is building client relationships, peaceful, harmonious client relationships, and therefore he was building repeat customers for the bank. So that was really important to him. That's actually why that was a contributing factor to his multiple promotions. He's now got, I don't know, he's a senior leader now in a bank. Are you the initiator? Do you have a track record of starting people? Do you like to nurture projects? You know, do you have this ability to learn things really quickly? Collaborate. As Sue-Ann was talking about, collaboration is huge, and I have yet to meet an MBA that isn't a really good collaborator. That's oftentimes why the value that I see of somebody in an MBA. I mean, I remember in my MBA, I'll just tell you kind of a sideline. One of the things that I tell people we had to learn was to work with people that we really didn't like, or we didn't get along with, or we didn't see eye to eye. You just have to, because that is part of the education. And I'll tell you, it has served me immensely in my career going forward. Are you the entertainer? Do you like to teach? Are you the one that likes to invent new things? Do you like to experiment? Or do you like to promote? So whatever that is, it's really important that you ask yourself, what kind of value have you served? Have you served others? A really great question to ask yourself to determine what your value is too, is ask yourself if there was ever a time in your life or your career where you might have gotten in trouble for something, where if the same situation were to repeat itself, you would do it all over again. You would do the same thing again. So whatever that is, that was not only your value talking to you, but that is probably what you should be doing more of. because that is something that you're going to do again regardless. It's your value screaming for air, screaming to get out of its shell. And that's why so many people, when they land jobs where they are not being paid for their value, it usually doesn't last long, or it doesn't go well, because ultimately you can only suppress your value for so long until finally it wants to jump out of the box, because that's why you were put here. That's why you were put on the planet. And so therefore, and it follows you around like a shadow. You cannot extract your value from you for love or money. It doesn't matter what you do. That value will follow you around for life. So you know what? Because you can't take it out of you, you can't pull it out of you, you might as well just get paid for it. But you have to find out, first of all, what the heck it is. So what is your value? And then go hunt for opportunities where you can actually be paid for that. And what's happening, one of the trends right now, is that people are actually having jobs created for them, new jobs. They are creating their own jobs because of their ability to sell others on their value. So please understand that these items that these are just some examples of value. These are things that people will actually pay you for. So when you think about it, if you've got a really good track record of resolving issues or building relationships, these are the reasons why you're going to land higher. These are the things that I want to pay you for, not just because you have some skill set that everybody else might have, or that is hugely in abundance right now. That's not going to land you your next job or your next promotion. It's understanding your value. So please understand that you need to take your value to market, and the only constant is your value. So I know that some of you are considering a pivot, or you're considering your next career steps. The reason that understanding your value is so important is because if you are going to consider a pivot, you are not going to have the skills required in order to do that next job necessarily. In our program, we work with a lot of oil and gas professionals, and we've done a couple of career pivot webinars, which are on our website. If you go to the speaker series tab, you'll be able to watch them. They're just short 1-hour webinars. And pretty much what is really interesting, you guys, is that, and some of them are MBAs, what is really interesting is that none of the presenters who have made successful pivots have required additional upskilling. But what they did have done is they had jobs created for them on the basis of their value. So how do you develop your own opportunity? Well, you do this thing called IPs, and I'm going to give you some practice doing this. So IP, for most of you, might stand for intellectual property, right? That's the legal world, that's the outside world. In my world, IP stands for the two most important questions that you should ask before you start selling yourself or having any deep or important conversation, whether it's with an employer, whether it's with your boss, whether it's with a colleague, whether it's with somebody in your network. So please remember this. I stands for what's important to you. P stands for what are your pain points. So there is no way that you are going to be able to effectively sell yourself anywhere unless you know somebody's pain points in advance. And understanding someone's pain points in advance requires a level of curiosity. It was heartbreaking. You know, I had a colleague of mine from Toronto talk to me recently, and she said, oh, you know, I'm so glad to be leaving. And she was going back to Toronto. I said, well, why is that? She said, oh, Albertans are so self-centered. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, oh yeah, all they seem to want to do is talk about themselves. And it's like, oh my God, it's the first time I ever heard of that. And I'm thinking, well, you don't want to know what we think about Torontonians. But what she was referring to is the fact that, you know, and it's something that I have noticed. It's a pattern. And I want you to pinch yourself every time you notice this. Is whenever you start talking about yourself too much, oftentimes the conversation goes sideways and it goes downhill really quickly. And the reason is that you're making the conversation all about yourself. So in order to have a strategic conversation, especially if you're going to sell yourself or sell your value, you have to know what somebody's pain points are. You have to know what's keeping them up at night. You have to know, you know, what is there one, if there was one thing on their plate that they could get off their plate that would let them sleep at night, or that would allow them to fulfill their potential, what would that be? And there's no way you could effectively sell yourself, regardless if you got the meeting because of a job description, job posting, or just because your boss called you in. It doesn't matter. You have got to understand what somebody's pain points are on a daily basis, because we're in a time right now of such accelerated change. Pain points today are different than pain points yesterday or last month, and they're going to be different than they will be tomorrow or the next month or whatever. And we're talking, so long term today is no longer a year or 6 years. We're talking more like a month, maybe 6 months. So the best thing you can do is arm yourself with what somebody's pain points are in order to find out what matters to them. Because when you are solving problems that matter to them on a daily, on a regular basis, you essentially become irreplaceable. So you want to have a rock star career. Every day you arm yourself with pretend you're a management consultant. And whether you're working or not, it doesn't matter. The same principles apply. You should be putting on your management consulting cap and saying, okay, well, listen, my job today is to find out what you need, what's important to you today, what's going on. So I'm going to take you through some examples of that later today. We can do some exercises. So my question to you is, what problems are you solving that are important to you? What problems would you like to solve that are important to you? How are you currently serving others? So the reason this is so important is because if you don't choose the problems that inspire you, you're going to get stuck with the problems that don't. So this is when I talk about being proactive when you're managing your career. My advice is find out which problems really inspire you. What problem would you be inspired to solve? So just think about that for a moment, you guys. Write down right now a problem that you would be inspired to solve. Anything in the world. But what would be really inspiring for you? And once you've written that down, now I want you to write one practical way that you could apply solving that problem. How could you apply it in the real world? So whatever it is that you wrote, if you could find an opportunity to get paid for that, you'd never work another day in your life. So going forward, it is about hunting down those problems you'd be inspired to solve. So that means being proactive. And you have to think in advance about, okay, well, what problems would I be inspired to solve? And when you're solving a problem, you are being of service. But it's a matter of being in service to the right target market. And so this is where a lot of careers will end, because their target market there's been an expiry date with their target market. Their employer just doesn't need them solving that problem that they were hired for. Okay, so fair enough. You move on and you find somebody else that would appreciate you solving that problem for them. But it's about doing those IPs. So you're really not going to know what's the problems to solve or that need to be solved unless you were doing those IPs. So when I think about Elon Musk, you guys have probably studied a lot about him in MBA school. Elon Musk, the reason that he has been so successful, I just want you to think about this for a moment. What problems do you think he's been inspired to solve? And really, the reason that Elon Musk has been so successful is because he's provided such tremendous service to the planet. And part of that service has been caring enough about the planet to find solutions to some of the world's greatest problems, right? He's making the impossible possible. And he's demonstrating. He's got first mover advantage of saying, hey, listen, you want to go to the moon? I'll show you. You want to go to Mars? I'll show you. You want to go to, I don't know, Saturn? Maybe he'll be taking us there. Who knows? But he's making the impossible possible, and he's inspiring people to follow him. So that's tremendous value. And so then you wonder why he's making so much money. It's because he's providing a service. So ask yourself, what value do you have to an employer? And, you know, I often like to talk about Mr. Trump here, and, you know, we laugh about him a lot. But when you think about the service that he was providing, and the value that he was providing his voters, I know that I want to talk about, usually I do this in a Q&A format, but when you think about it, his value probably wasn't being the most astute president, shall we say. I mean, maybe it was. That's probably disputable in itself. Most people don't feel that way. But the value that you were guaranteed to get from him no matter what, when you think about it, and it stems back from his career as a reality TV guy, right? With The Apprentice. What was he doing? He was providing entertainment. So guaranteed, when you turn on the television or on the news or whatever, the one thing you were guaranteed to get from Trump, no matter what, was to be entertained. And he knew that. And he knew that unless he was entertaining the masses, they were not going to vote for him. So this guy probably had one of the most powerful brands in the world, because it got him elected to one of the most powerful jobs in the world, powerful posts in the world. Now, there's a big difference between liking a brand and having a powerful brand. So please understand, I mean, I do a lot of work in career branding. And, you know, the best brands in the world don't necessarily have to be liked. So that same thing applies to you. Do not confuse yourself with having a brand that appeals to everybody. If you're trying to appeal to everybody, you're going to appeal to nobody. I call those career chameleons. Career chameleons never land. They never land higher because they don't know who they are. They don't know what their value is, and they just try to move from pillar to post, and they just don't have credibility. So own your weirdness. Like, do not apologize for who you are. And when you think about Steve Jobs, I love him. He was probably one of the world's best role models in not taking his skills or his expertise to market. You probably studied him in MBA school, but the reason that he was so successful, you guys, is because he wasn't just marketing technology. He wasn't taking his technology market. He was taking his value to market. And he identified that his value to the world, to his consumers, to his buyers, had nothing to do with technology. What he was doing, what he was selling, was the fact that he was going to make your life easier. He was going to make your life simpler. You use one of his products, your life is going to be simpler. So he did a remarkable job of packaging that. So when it comes to taking you to market, you have to be looking at yourself as though you were a product that was also going to market, and asking yourself, okay, well, how am I going to package the fact that I'm a really good relationship builder? Well, this is part of the fun part of it. And then it's about educating everybody around you, above you and below you, not with the fact that, you know, you've got all these great educational credentials, but it's about your value. That is what people are going to remember, because they're going to hire a relationship builder, for example, before they're going to hire an MBA, because it's what's in it for them. Employers today want to hire and promote people that know who they are, know who they aren't, and can articulate what is in it for them. People want to hire those that can explain to them what they can do for them today, not 6 months or 6 years from now. What is it that what value are you going to provide to me now in real time? So find out, do those IPs, find out what's important to people, and sell your value that way. So when it comes to identifying your value, it really comes down to the question of, you know, understanding your unique, I call it your unique career DNA. What is it that makes you different? What is it that makes you stand out from the other thousands of MBAs on the planet that might be in transition, or wanting to stand out, wanting to land higher in their lives or in their careers? And one of the tricks is to understand the importance of connecting your head to your heart. When I started Higher Landing, I was actually really afraid to come out of the closet and use the word heart, because I thought people would think that I was nuts. And what I realized is that this is really who I am. And, you know, I'm a very heart-based leader, and I'll be using the heart is very important to me. And what I realized is, from a career perspective, is that nobody in the world has landed higher or been successful without having made the journey from here to here. And I'm not going to tell you it's an easy one, but it's probably one of the most important journeys you will ever make in your life. So I'm going to take you through a bit of a model in order to figure that out. And the one thing too, when you're trying to identify your value, you guys, I always say to our clients, own your weirdness. Don't ever apologize for who you are. And I know that a lot of our clients put up barriers. They say, well, nobody wants to hire somebody from this country or with this background, or, I've had so many jobs, no one wants to hire me. Hey, listen, you can't change any of that. So own it. Because in this, and just as an example, I get this a lot of times. People would say, oh, people are looking at my resume and they look like I look like I'm really unstable because I've done so many things. In this job market today, that's actually something that is really valued. It doesn't matter if you've had, 3 jobs or, 5 jobs in the past year. When I had my recruiting business, we had this rule where, unless somebody was at a job for about 3 years, we kind of put them at the bottom of the pile because we thought, they wouldn't be attractive candidates. Well, now, if you've had 5 jobs in a year, you're going to be a more attractive candidate because it's demonstrating that you're willing to try new things. You're willing to invest in yourself. I would rather hire somebody that is open to change and willing to try new things than resistant to change and is only used to doing one thing the same way over and over, because they're not going to be of value to me when my business changes. I want people that can change in real time and help me innovate and help me keep up to future of work trends. So whatever you are, you guys, don't ever apologize for who you are. The process to taking yourselves to market, and this applies whether you are working or you are in transition. This is a 3-stage transformation process that I created, and it includes 3 things. So transition, branding, and marketing, and it's just very much like taking a product to market. So when you think about the common sense way for any product to go to market, it really comes down to three things. Number 1, you have to know what the product is. 2, you have to package it up. The last thing you do is you take it to market in that order. And where most people fall apart is they race to market and they're not ready. And so when you step back and you look at this in more detail, you realize that first step of transition is really one of self-discovery. And people often, they underestimate the importance of how truly critical it is to understand yourself, understand who you are as that product, your features, benefits. What is it that makes you so different? What is it that makes you stand out from everybody else? Because the market is so competitive. So that's kind of the first step. And I'm going to take you through a bit of a model to help you figure that out yourself. Once you understand that, who you are outside of, like I said, outside of just your hard skills and your education and all that exterior stuff, then it's a matter of packaging it. But where most people fall down from a career perspective is they end up packaging themselves on what they think is a fancy resume. They pay some resume writer, thousands of dollars, and they have this really pretty resume that doesn't do anything for them whatsoever. It gets 0 results. And I'll tell you that it's because they're packaging the wrong thing. What you have to package when it comes to this branding stage is not your hard skills, it's your value. It's the output of those skills. So how will my company be different with you in it? How will my life be different with you in it? What can you be relied on for no matter what? So if you're going to make my life easier, if you're going to make me look good, if you're going to make me money, if you're going to bring relationships to, how are you going to package that? So when it comes to your career, understand that branding or that packaging stage needs to involve consistent messaging. So that means being consistent with how you package your resume, your LinkedIn profile, how you speak. It's your voicemail. Like when I call you, I want to make sure that if you call yourself, you're saying that you're say that a Navy SEAL type of person. You get things done. You're prepared to be thrown to the wolves. You're not afraid of anything. Well, your voice message better also be consistent with that. So then the last stage in this process is taking yourself to market. And where most people fall down here is they fail to understand who their target market is. When it comes to taking yourself to market, you guys, your target market does not first include those companies that you want to work for. And most people, I see in my business, they say, oh, I want to work for Amazon, or I want to work for whatever company. And I say, okay, well, that's great, but what's in it for them? Well, what do you mean? Well, I've got an MBA, I've got this. Well, I'll tell you, that is so not going to cut it. And I would never help somebody and market somebody in just because of that. What I want to know is, what is your value to them? So when it comes to taking yourself to market, and this applies whether you're trying to get a promotion, a better job, or a new one, you have to be taking your value to market. So what is in it for somebody else? Who is going to appreciate your value? So if you don't know your value, you're going to have no target market. You're not going to be ready to go to market. So part of this process is distinguishing those that will appreciate your value versus those that won't. And oftentimes, like, I'll ask our clients 2 questions. Number 1, I'll say, okay, well, can you name some dream employer that you'd love to work for right now? So they think about it. And then I say, okay, well, now I want you to ask yourself a different question. Who do you think will appreciate your value? And they get this deer in the headlight look, and they can't really figure it out because they don't know. And it's because they don't know their value. So please remember these 3 stages when you're taking yourself to market. In our program, and if anybody does take the boot camp or one of the other programs, it takes about 3 months to really master this. So this is a transformation model that I pioneered about 6 years ago, and we've probably taken, well over 4,000 professionals through this. And this is a model that you can use to help articulate your value or your brand. So we're taking you from the stages of transition all the way up to transformation. Transformation, it's really important that you understand, that does not necessarily mean transitioning or pivoting your career. Transition means developing a higher level of self-awareness. So, because that's who people want to hire. And you're never going to land higher in your life or your career unless you know who you are. You get a clarity on who that is. And most people, unfortunately, never do this work until a crisis hits. Right? So something happens that, they lose their job, or they don't like their job, or, there's some family issue that happens. I would rather see you guys be proactive and do this in advance of that. So the very bottom of the pyramid here is, we have survival and crisis. And by the way, this is based on a change management model called the logical levels of change. Some of you might be familiar with it. All I've done is I've adapted it to those for career management purposes. So survival and crisis is at the bottom. So what this means is that if you're going through something really serious in your life or your career, like a death, a divorce, let's say a really serious job loss that you didn't see coming, you get sick, my advice to you is you have to take a time out to find some stability in your life first, because that's not a time to be thinking strategic about anything. And when you think about when people are in survival and crisis, it's impossible for them to market themselves effectively because they come across as desperate. They come across as desperate because all they're concerned about is me, I. So if that is the case and you have to get a desperation job, you go right ahead. No one is going to judge you for it. We've all been there. So the reason that doesn't work, though, when you are managing your career is because one of the tricks to landing higher is it's about caring about somebody else. And when you're in that survival or crisis, it's near impossible to care about anybody else but yourself. So therefore, it is near impossible to do an IP on someone. Because imagine, you've just gone through, you've gone through a major loss or crisis in your life, and you show up at a job interview or a really important meeting. Do you know how hard it is to pretend to care about what somebody else is saying? It's near impossible. And if you try, people are much more transparent than you realize. People are going to see through that. So where we start everybody is abilities and skills. So here, what I would like you to do is to do an inventory of both your hard skills and your soft skills. I would say that this is where 95% of job seekers are stuck. And when I say that, it's because what they're doing is they're spinning their resume out on social media, playing that job lottery, as I call it, solely marketing themselves on the basis of their hard skills and their credentials. That does not work in this market because it is way too competitive. So the one way you can differentiate is by not just examining and articulating your hard skills, but looking at your soft skills. So parts of your personality that nobody will ever, you were born with, there were behaviors, you cannot change those regardless. I often tell our clients that, you might be hired for a hard skill, but you're going to be promoted for a soft skill. Or you might be hired, you might get an interview because of your hard skills, but you're going to get the job because of your soft skills. So you better know what those soft skills are. Your soft skills better translate into value for somebody else. How are you going to be of service there? The next level on the pyramid is the first one where we look at your interests and passions. It's the first step of connecting your head to your heart. And a lot of people don't understand, they underestimate the importance of this, and they think, oh, you know, heart, you know, what is, that's all goofy stuff. Well, it's the question there, it's not goofy. It is probably one of the most important questions you can ask yourself. And this is part of the self-discovery process. So it's about asking yourself, you know, what are those things, what are your passions, what are your interests, what are those things that get you excited to jump out of bed in the morning? And the reason for that is it's not because that's what you're going to be doing in your life or your career. It's about asking yourself, well, why is that? And then connecting the dots. So just give you a quick example. There was a fellow in our program, he was an engineer, and he had just been laid off from a job that he was at for about 10 years, sort of middle senior manager. And the poor guy, when he came into the program, he was really broken and really upset and mad about his former employer and whatever. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to make him feel better, and I'm going to take him through this level of the pyramid. I'm going to talk about his passions. So I said, okay, Jim, I said, what is it that you're really passionate about? He goes, passion, nothing. I thought, okay, call it something else. Call it, you know, interests, hobbies. What is it that you like to do in your spare time? Nothing. I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. I said, okay, well, what is it that, what did you do on the weekend? Oh, well, I was gardening with my wife. And I said, oh, so you like gardening, do you? And he said, oh, come on, no, I didn't say that. And I said, okay, well, listen, I knew his whole mind was at his last job. So I said, okay, Jim, I said, let me ask you a different question. Can you think of a time? I said, what is it that you like about gardening? Oh, well, I guess it's kind of creative, and I don't know, maybe it's kind of nurturing or something. And I said, oh, so is nurturing important to you? Oh, come on, no, I didn't say that. So I said, okay, go back to that last job. And I said, can you think of something where you might have nurtured something and it resulted in some sort of a win? All of a sudden, you guys, dead silence. And I finally looked over at him, and I could see the poor guy's lips start to quiver. All of a sudden, he put his head up and he said, you know, when I look back at my last job, he said, yes, I can. He said, when I look back at my last role, he said, it's like everybody who reported to me went on to do greater things than I did. One became the VP of this company, one became a president here, one started his own business, and all of a sudden Jim broke into tears. And he said, you know, I had no idea that I had any value whatsoever. And I said, well, listen, Jim, I said, did your boss know that about you? And he said, oh, I don't think so. And I said, well, you got to cut them some slack, because you know what? That wasn't their responsibility. I said, what do you mean? I said, this is what career management is about. I said, maybe if they knew your value of being the builder of these kings, I called him the kingmaker. Who knows, maybe you'd still have your job. But I said, at the end of the day, I said, this is not their responsibility. It is your responsibility to make sure that everybody you work with, your boss, your peers, everybody beneath you, knows what your value is and knows that that's what you want to be known as the go-to person for. Because then what's going to happen is that if the inevitable does happen and you do end up getting laid off or you leave, you're going to have an army of people advocating for you because they know what your value is. And so anyway, when he realized that his value came from asking the question of what his passions were, and it came from gardening, I'll tell you, that guy's life changed in a minute. He left this workshop with a skip and a step I'm sure he hadn't had in years. Anyway, so this is why it's so important. It's not about asking yourself those interest questions because, you know, it's what you're going to do for a career. No, it's understanding the why, and then why is that, and why is that. The next level is understanding your values and beliefs and what is important to you. The reason that is so important is because if what's important to you is not important to who you're working for or with, you're not going to be happy or successful. The next level is identity. Who are you? And you have to be able to explain to somebody who you are in 5 seconds or less. Otherwise, they're not going to remember you and they're not going to help you. People, the worst thing people can do when they're selling themselves is, oh, you know, I'm this and I'm that, and they go on and on and on, and finally the next person's eyes are just glazing over and they're thinking, oh my God, just get out of here. I got to get out of here. And it's because they weren't articulating their value. So you've got 5 seconds to be able to tell somebody what your value is on the basis of this whole pyramid. The next level, of course, is purpose, and that's helping you to get clear on what you should be doing rather than what you can do. I want to caution you when you're with your next opportunity, or if you're in your current one, if you're being hired just because you can do it versus being hired because you should do it, it's probably not gonna work out as well as it were as if you were being paid for your value. So I want you to be thinking about that. A lot of people ask, what are the 10 most in-demand hard skills globally? This is just an FYI. Blockchain, cloud computing, analytical reasoning, AI, user experience design, business analysis, affiliate marketing, sales, and scientific computing. Now, this I created a few months ago. It's probably been updated. It's probably changing even since. That's how quickly the world is changing. What is interesting, though, is that most in-demand soft skills, creativity, persuasion, collaboration, as I said earlier, adaptability, learnability, emotional intelligence or social perceptiveness, and multicultural awareness. We are now working in a world without borders. So you have to be able to collaborate with people from all over the world. And you have to be able to have those soft skills to be able to effectively interact with them. We're also moving into a time of what I call this exponential employee, where people are now being paid to experiment, to try new things. So if that includes you, you want to make sure that you put that on your resume, or you tell your boss that, hey, listen, I'd love to, I've got this track record of experimenting things, and I know that that's really important to you, because you're going to lose your competitive advantage unless you are. So this is something people would be paying you for, being able to use the crowd. If you've got an ability to use the crowd, when I think about crowd, I'm thinking about social media, crowdsourcing. Who would have thought 10 years ago that it would be legal to raise money online? This is a reason that somebody's going to pay you. Look at Facebook, look at Twitter, look at some of these mammoth internet giants. They're using the crowd. That's how they made their fortunes. If you have an ability to automate things, being creative, thinking out of the box, and always learning, these are reasons that people will hire you. So the future of work beyond 2021 is about assuming control of your own career management, you guys, because no one's going to do it for you. Please understand that. You're going to be rewarded for the value you bring versus how loyal you were in your last job. Career security is also replacing job security. But as I said earlier, the only way to have that is to know your value or your brand, or as I like to call it, your secret sauce. Because remember, a job can be ripped away from you in a second. Knowing your value stays with you for life. It's really important that you understand what your value is. We're seeing a lot more discontinuous career paths, so don't beat yourself up. A lot of people are having multiple jobs. They have their day job and they have their evening job. One of our HR clients just started his own podcast, and now that's gotten so busy that he's thinking about leaving that because he's starting to generate revenue from the podcast, and that's really where his passion is. We're seeing a lot of that. A lot more people pivoting careers, not necessarily because they want to, but because they have to. And a lot of people wanting to get out of the energy sector too. That's just a reality, so we're helping them do that. A lot more people working on contract, freelancing, starting their own businesses. It's interesting, we had McKinsey do a workshop for us yesterday. So that webinar, if any of you are interested in working there, would be worth your time to look it up on our website. It's under our speaker series. It's just an hour, and they're talking about work opportunities at McKinsey. They do hire a lot of MBAs too. But one of the things that they've said is that 30% of jobs are going to be automated by 2030, with automation and AI lifting productivity and economic growth. I actually think that it's going to be more like 50% of jobs that are going to be automated and be made redundant by the end of this decade. There are no more jobs for life. You have to be able to demonstrate learnability and soft skills, and this is probably one of the best times ever to create your own job. All right, so what I would like to do now is would like to, if you guys are okay with it, I would like to put you into breakout rooms. And I'm just looking here. I don't have a breakout room facility, so I'm going to have to ask maybe Sue Ann or Pamela to help me out here. But what I would like to do, and I'm going to put you into groups of maybe 2, possibly 3. And what I would like you to do is to do an IP on somebody that you don't know. So if you end up getting partnered with somebody that you do know, just raise your hand and we can switch you around. I just wanted to share with you some examples of some IP questions. So there's different ways to initiate an IP. And it's funny, I'll never forget, I was at a meeting with the Premier. This is shortly after he got elected. And I was so nervous, but I was summoned to this meeting. I guess they wanted to find out about my perspective on the job market and that sort of thing. And so I came armed with all of this information, and he had all of his I'd sent him a bunch of briefing documents, which is what his aide asked for. Well, when I got there, he didn't know why I was there. I'm like, I was sweating bullets to prepare for this, and you don't even know why I'm there. And I'll tell you, that meeting started going south in a hurry. So I'm just thinking, what am I going to do I have to recover this? I don't want to waste his time. So all of a sudden, I'm just thinking IP. And I was so nervous, you guys, that I couldn't think of a creative way to do an IP. So all of a sudden, I just blurted out, well, what's important to you? And well, what are your pain points? And I just assumed that getting people back to work and getting them jobs was his pain point. Well, that wasn't the case at all. All of a sudden, he said, important to me, and he slammed his fist and he said, you know what's important to me? We have to get investment back into this province. And that's what's important to me. That's why I've been traveling around the world and trying to get investors and market Alberta and all the investment opportunities, blah, 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 blah. So finally, as soon as I got that information, immediately the conversation went back on track and I saved the day. And at the end of the conversation, he was laughing. And so that was it was a really positive conversation in the end. So this is how IPs can save the day. But what I would like you to do is to IP your partner. And doing an effective IP requires a high level of curiosity. And you have to show that you care about somebody else other than yourself. And I talk about this curiosity quotient. And my quotient for curiosity is this: 50% about asking the right questions, and 50% about actually caring about the answer. So if you are asking somebody a question and you really don't care about what they're saying, is because maybe you are in that desperation or crisis mode, don't even bother asking, because it's going to be a waste of your time and theirs. So please understand the importance of being curious, and it requires getting really interested in somebody else. What's going on with them? So there's a number of ways that you can do IP questions, and depending on who it is, I mean, I would assume that none of you here are employer or going to be meeting with somebody for a job per se, but you're going to be able to share, issues that might be happening in your lives or your careers with somebody else. And as you're listening, I want you to use those active listening skills to see how you can help. How could you be of service to them? Think about that. So ways to do IP questions, a great way to start. How are you doing? Somebody might start great conversation. Oh my gosh, well, I'm in a crisis, and my house just burnt down last week, and I had to take my dog to the bed and whatever. Okay, well, listen, already you're getting information, right? But it's about getting people to open up. One of the signs that you'll have when you've done an IP really well is that the other person ends up doing all the talking. You end up doing more listening than you do talking. And that especially applies to work. A lot of our clients say, well, I just went to a job interview and I did this whole IP thing, like you said, Jackie. And but as it turned out, I thought that it was a terrible meeting because, I kept asking them questions and they never asked me any questions. I said, don't you worry. I said, if they did all the talking, you just be prepared. Next thing you know, they're getting calls back for a second interview. And the reason is that when you are expressing an IP, when you're doing IPs on somebody, what you're doing is you're demonstrating an interest in them. And when you're demonstrating a genuine interest in somebody, what ends up happening is your likability factor goes up. People trust you more, they like you more, and they're interested, they're more interested in you. So even though you might think that it was a complete waste of time because it was a one-way conversation, don't kid yourself. Because you've just made an impression on somebody that mattered, you're going to hear from them again. So ways to start IP questions. I mean, how are you doing? What would Nirvana, and these are more for work-related things. I mean, what would Nirvana look with the ideal person in the role? Or if everything lined up perfectly for you in your life, what would that look like? What are your priorities for this role and the timeline you'd like to achieve it? What's keeping you up at night? A great one is, what's changed for you since COVID? Or if there was one obstacle in the way of you achieving your full potential, what would that be? Et cetera, et cetera. So if you guys, does anyone have any questions before we get started? Okay, so Miriam or Sue-Ann, I'm going to have to ask you for your help in putting breakout rooms together because I don't see that I've got breakout rooms here, which is interesting.
I will start assigning right now on my end.
Are you okay, Pamela?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes. What I would like you to do is spend about 6 or 7 minutes per side, and then we'll come back and we'll have a chat. But the idea behind this is to get as curious as you can about your partner. Find out what's keeping them up at night. Try to care, right? Express a genuine interest in them. And so just see how it goes and then see how you might be able to be of service. So my question is, first of all, how did the IPs go? Did you meet somebody new at the very least? What kind of questions did you ask? That's what I want to know. Okay, so you're quiet. Sorry?
Sorry, I thought I'd just jump in. I asked I had Sue-Ann, I asked her what her top priorities were in her current role within her job at Suncor.
Oh, interesting. So were you able to identify any pain points?
Yes, hopefully she's okay with me sharing what we talked about. She kind of went through a rebranding recently about who she wants to be and like some of the things you were saying earlier with how she creates value. And so now she's feeling a little bit better about herself and her brand and the value that she creates. And she's found that it actually, exactly like you said, has propelled her career forward in the direction that she wants. And she's very happy.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So you guys, the next step is to be doing IPs with everybody in your network. So if you are in transition, I want you to identify, you should be doing at least 5 IPs a week with people that you want to connect with. And so rather than asking them for a job, if you are in transition, just offer to do, like, just listen, I'd like to connect with you and find out if there's something that I can do to help, or you just care, right? So doing IPs is something that you're going to just have to get, I want you to incorporate in your everyday life. Do IPs on your family. There was a client of ours that did an IP on his 2 kids, his 2 boys. He got laid off he's an engineer, got laid off from his job. He was there almost 20 years. So, and he said, I was on this treadmill. Every day I'd leave home at 7 o'clock, come home at 6. I would eat dinner, and then go back into my office at 7 o'clock, and every day was Groundhog Day. And so he said, when I got laid off, it's like I didn't know what to do with my time. So I went home and I IP'd my 2 boys, and his kids were in high school. And he came into when he was telling me this story, actually, Rick, I think you might even know him. He started to cry. And I said, my gosh, I said, what happened? And he said, it was so embarrassing. As a father, I am embarrassed that I did not know what those kids were going through. And he said, I said, well, what happened? He said, well, they just thought that I was too busy and they didn't want to bother me. But he said, as a parent, I should have known. So he said, every day I'm going to make a point of doing, IPs with my kids. So it's really a valuable technique to get into with any important conversation, you guys, especially if it's a career one. So one of the exercises that we do in our program, and I'm sharing some of my intellectual property with you, if you are interested in further unpeeling your value and your value proposition and identifying transferable skills, this is a really good exercise. So you're going to be sent it after today's class, and it's something to do with, it's called appreciative inquiry, which is based on positive psychology. And appreciative inquiry is getting you to think about what is possible rather than what is not. And what we do in the program is we get people to do this exercise really early on in the program to get them thinking about, what is possible, get them in a really positive mindset, because whatever that is, we can get them back there. But what we want to do is when you identify, think of a time when you were at the top of your game, when all the stars were aligned and you were on fire and you were just loving life, you were loving your job. What was happening? Who were you with? What were you talking about? Who were you working with? Where were you working? What were you doing? and then describe that story in just a few bullets. And then you can work with a partner, pick somebody in your MBA cohort or somebody here, and tell them what your story is, and then have them identify what they see, what they see. I mean, what is it? What skills or value is it that they see that stand out? And then do the same for your partner. And oftentimes, other people can see our transferable skills and our value way better than we can. But the best way to do that is to put yourself in a real life situation. And it's like doing a situation analysis, but on yourself and or on a partner, and say, okay, well, you know, if you were really on fire when you closed that deal, okay, well, what was happening? Why was that so exciting for you? You know, how did that make you feel? And then it's identifying, well, you know, the reason that you closed that, from my perspective, what I'm hearing is that you were able to develop really good relationships, long-term relationships, or you were really analytical, or, you know, you were really good at analyzing things on a dime or thinking on your feet. So these are all ways for you to further like peel back the layers of you. And so these are really, really great exercises if you would like to do these on your own. Once again, you know, I love this question. You know, have you ever done anything that's got you into trouble at work? So if you have, and it was something that you would do again, please remember, you guys, that that's something you should probably be doing more of, because that's your value talking to you. So just think about that. Okay, so I'm going to just go back to the slides here. There's just a few more things that I wanted to share with you. There's this management consultant from Edmonton. His name is Sean Kanungo. I don't know if any of you guys have heard about him, but he's worth looking into. Just Google him. He talks about, you know, the balance of power shifting from organizations to people. And now what is happening is that people are legitimate businesses. So now you are our businesses. So, and a trend that I've also noticed with our clients is that there's been less attraction to some of these larger organizations and more people wanting to congregate towards the small startups or smaller businesses where they feel that there's more opportunity and more ways for them to apply their value. So, and I've also seen people turn into YouTube stars almost overnight. They come, or podcasters, right? And the next thing you know, they're making all kinds of revenue, generating all kinds of revenue from YouTube because of some silly interview series that they've cobbled together. That the public, they're solving a pain point, right? They're serving people because they've identified something that the public or their target market audience happens to be interested in. So it's, once again, it's IPing those audiences. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the boot camp. So we do have a boot camp that I think is going to be raffled off today, and it's a 10-week boot camp. There's superior value with it. Ideally, I would like for it's ideally meant for those that are in transition, because you've got a 10-week window to be in and out. There's live workshops, there's practice clinics. I call it like a mini career MBA. There is you get to watch this thing called the Grizzly Den, and the Grizzly Den is very similar to TV's Dragon's Den. We do them twice a month in our office. We have decision makers from the community who will pose as, it's kind of like a live panel interview. Sometimes our clients actually get hired, so that's also part of the program. There's an online learning component. There's a learning portal, all of that kind of thing. So it's pretty intense. But we've crammed in a ton of value for you in 10 weeks. So I'm going to show you a little bit about that in a moment. There's a sample curriculum for those that are interested. I can share these slides with you later if you're interested. We do them in cohorts that start every month. So the next cohort is actually starting next week. So if anyone is interested and want to register for that, you've got to get your application in ASAP. I think the first workshop is Thursday and the orientation is next Tuesday or Wednesday. What happens with the Grizzly Den is you will get Grizzly certified. If the majority of people of Grizzlies on the panel feel that you are indeed ready to go to market, you get Grizzly certified. We post these pictures online. It's not uncommon for people to actually get job interviews from their Grizzly Den postings as well. So It's a great way for you to increase your visibility, market your brand, and really tap into that hidden job market. There's one of the things that I'm happy to offer those attendees today is a 15% discount for anybody that's attended today. And the discount code is MBA 2021. It will be valid only until July 31st. So if you would like to go onto our website and check out any of our programs, I would like to encourage you to check them out. They range anywhere. I mean, you can just attend a workshop for a few $100s, or you can the boot camp is, I think, $5.99. It's very reasonably priced, especially for what you get. And then we have other programs that include coaching and the Grizzly Den that are more extensive. So there's a free, I do information sessions twice a month. The next one happens to be Monday afternoon, and you can register for that on our website. And that'll give you more information on our program. For any of you that are interested in pivoting, we have a career pivot webinar coming up. June 18th over the lunch hour. I just wanted to mention that to you. You can register for that. That's free. It's on our website. For those of you too, I just wanted to mention we have a program that we can sponsor. The government is sponsoring. I think it's about 10 or 11 clients per month. That you have to qualify. So there's some limitations. You have to be you have to have qualified for EI sometime within the past 5 of the past 10 years. You have to be a professional in Calgary that is able, ready, and willing to get back to work. You have to be currently unemployed. And your job loss has to be somehow tied to the decline of the energy sector, which is pretty much everybody. But we do have these start once a month, and the program for that is our shuttle program. It's a $4,000 program, and it's also over a 3-month period of time, and it's very comprehensive. So I will go through that in the information session. We have one starting next week. So if anyone is interested, I would recommend that you start by attending that information session. I'm just going to quickly do a share on our website so you can just see what I'm talking about. Where is it here? Oops. So information on the boot camp, if you just click at the top of our website, you can learn about it all here. Anybody that is interested in in the various programs that we offer outside of the boot camp, you can see them under the programs tab. And then if you're interested in any of our speaker series, you can see some of the recordings here. Some of these are MBAs as well, but some of them are certainly worth seeing. If you just wanted to register for an upcoming free event, you are welcome to. You just go onto our homepage and go to upcoming workshops. You can see some of these are free. Others you have to be a client or you have to pay. But yeah, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So my wish for you is a higher landing for everybody, whatever that looks like. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Excellent. So if anybody wants to ask a question, you can post it in the chat. We only have a couple of minutes left because we're very close to the end of our event. So if you don't have any questions, maybe we can quickly move to what has been promised. We have the draw of I guess there's no questions, right?
For you guys, if any of you have questions afterwards and you want to reach out to me, just the best place to reach me is probably just info@higherlanding.com. I should have mentioned that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jackie. And first of all, thank you for a great session, a very, very helpful and illuminating exercise. We've learned so much from you today, lots of things to think about. The world as we know it has changed, and we all must change with it. I don't know about you guys, but I have always struggled with when dealing with uncertainty, and this session has helped me to use my value to embrace it and to see the opportunities that come with it. So thank you very much, Jackie, for sharing your expertise with us.
You're most welcome.
Now, as promised, we have the draw of a 10-week bootcamp with Higher Landing. And I will call upon Pamela to do the honors. Over to you, Pam.
Okay, all right. I have the names loaded into a randomizer. I'm going to shuffle the names. Here we go. And then random name. Oh, I'm sorry in advance because I'm probably going to not say this name correctly. Pirahas Balasingham. You are the winner of today's prize. I will connect with you by email to get everything arranged.
So if you would like to get started right away, my suggestion would be to register, and I don't know how to say this name, Paramana? Oh, Pirahas. So Pirahas, if you would like to register, you can just register on our website for the information session Monday afternoon, but then you'll have to pick up a booklet if you want to get started right away. So we can either mail that out to you, or you can come down to our office and pick that up. The cohort, like I said, starts sometime next week, so we can send you a bunch of information on that.
Well, thank you, Jackie, and congratulations to the lucky winner. And if no one else has anything else to add, we will conclude.
Mariam, there is a question from me.
Oh, I don't see it.
I just put it on.
We have a blog, podcast, or YouTube channel. You know, we have a YouTube channel that includes some of my recordings on our website. It's under the webinars page. But you know what? It's funny. So many people have asked me to start a podcast, and it's like, you know how hard it is. You know how much time it takes to run a business. Never mind, do all of these other things on the side. If that's all I had to do, I would love it. But
you are such a great speaker. I like your speech today. So if you're going to have podcast, I think I will definitely subscribe.
Oh, wonderful. Well, if somebody wants to produce it for me and can minimize can guarantee a minimum amount of time for it on my part, I'm all in.
Do it, Jackie.
Thank you, Jenny. Just one last thing is I'd like to remind you that you will receive an email with the appreciative inquiry exercise to help you identify your value and to help you pinpoint what made you at the top of your game. The email also will include a link to today's event. Thank you very much again, Jackie. Thank you for the fantastic presentation, to Pam from the Haskayne Alumni Office for supporting the event today, and to David Zeh, who is already who had to leave, but he is from the board of the Alumni Alliance because he was critical in putting this together. Thank you all for joining us today. We are grateful that you take the time to participate in the events that we organize. We hope to see you again, and we hope to see you in person soon. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thanks.